So there's new rumors floating around that suggest Nintendo is going to be doing some type of hardware revision when it comes to the Nintendo Switch. Now these rumors are actually brought to you by the guys at Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal is actually saying Nintendo is going to be doing a Switch Mini and a Switch Pro. I know you guys by now are probably tired of hearing this news about a new Switch model. It seems like we've been talking about this for literally ever and everybody on the internet, whether you're a gamer or not a gamer. It seems like just a lot of people on the internet are talking about this news. So it is kind of, again, kind of boring that this is coming out because we've already covered this so many times. But hey, this is the gaming news. What can I really do? And this is sort of a big deal that Wall Street Journal, out of all the companies, Wall Street Journal actually came out and said, yes, there could be a Switch Mini and a Switch Pro. Now, there's nothing confirmed. Keep that in mind. They do not have any concrete evidence that these are true, but most likely we are going to be talking about some type of Switch revision. If you look at a lot of different consoles and handhelds, there is always usually some type of revision, so the Nintendo Switch is going to be no different. Like, for instance, you look at the 3DS line of consoles. We've had so many 3DSs over the years. We had the 2DS line, whether you're talking about the original 2DS or new 2DS XL. We've had the original 3DS, the new 3DSs, and then the XL versions of those as well. So you can see there's been a lot of models as there. And then moving over to the current gen hardware, of course, the Xbox One and the PS4. We've had the baseline models of those. We've also had slim down version of those consoles, and then we also had Pro version of those consoles. So you can see the PS4 and the Xbox One have had so many iterations of their current gen hardware that it makes sense that we're going to get some type of iteration. Now, when it comes to a Switch Mini and a Switch Pro, a lot of people were split between the two. They can say we're going to get a Switch Mini. It would make sense because, well, the Nintendo 3DS is already on the way out, and they actually don't have a dedicated handheld console for kids and whatnot. And on top of that, the Nintendo Switch is just a little bit too high for the kids. If you look at this thing, it's $300, and some parents just don't want to spend $300 for a console. So if you were to make a Nintendo Switch Mini, well, it can definitely be cheaper. It would be undockable, so you would not be able to dock this thing into a dock. It would be handheld mode only, and the Joy-Cons would be attached to save money and things like that. Wall Street Journal actually says that there's going to be no implementation of HD Rumble in the Switch Mini, if there is a Switch Mini at all. Do I actually believe this? Yes, I actually believe this. That would cut down cost, and on top of that, if this thing was not dockable, and if it didn't have any if it didn't have any Joy-Cons that could be detached, overall it would cut down the cost a lot. Honestly, if you ask me about these two models coming out, do I think there's going to be a possibility that there's actually going to be two different SKUs of the system? Personally, if you ask me, I do think that there is going to be two different SKUs of the upcoming Nintendo Switch revision because, well, it makes sense from both standpoints. I know some of you guys out there may disagree with this, but I do think there is a possibility we could be getting both. And if we don't get both, we could go either way when it comes to a new Switch revision, whether we're talking about a Switch Mini or a Switch Pro. But yeah, I definitely think a Switch Mini is definitely likely, and I think both could be likely because, well, no 3DS, of course. They need a handheld for the kids. Cut down the price. It'll be $200. Overall, it makes sense that they could be doing a Switch Mini. So Switch Mini definitely makes sense. And on top of that, some people's complaints with the Switch that we currently have is the fact that it's not really portable to an extent. So what I'm saying is you can't really bring that on the go with you as portably as you could with, like, let's say a 3DS. So if you have something that's much more smaller, maybe gamers who want to play their Nintendo Switch on the go may end up actually buying this. So it's actually good for Nintendo as well because you will get people who aren't just kids buying this thing. You'll get people who only care about the handheld nature of the Switch, and they will go out and buy this thing, especially if it's like $150, $200. I see this thing being more around $200. I don't see any way they can bring the cost totally down to $150. I think that would be around the 2DS XL's price. Keep in mind, they still sell the 3DS models. It's not like they're discontinued. The support for those are pretty much dying down, and there's almost like no games coming out for the 3DS. But as long as the 3DS is still on the market, it just would not make sense if they're trying to compete with their own hardware. So why would they sell that at 150 if they already have a system at like close to 150 with the new 2DS XL. So I can see that being strictly $200. Now let's move over to the Nintendo Switch Pro. What are we talking about when we're talking about a new Nintendo Switch Pro? Well, it's really hard to tell what type of improvements Nintendo is going to be doing with a new Nintendo Switch Pro. It can go a lot of different ways. Maybe they won't even update the internal specs of the thing. Maybe we'll just get small improvements, like some type of Joy-Con improvements. Maybe we'll get a bigger battery. Maybe we'll get a bigger screen. Maybe games will get a slight increase in terms of resolution and performance, but we're not going to be getting a totally brand new chipset. Maybe the current chipset, the Tegra, I think X1, will get better performance, maybe a slight overclocking or something like that to make it to where you can actually play games at better resolutions and better frame rates, like I was talking about. Actually, fun fact, if you do end up hacking your Switch, I do know you can already overclock the Switch already with the Tegra X1, so maybe that's what Nintendo would do. They'll keep it, but then they'll do the hacking route where they pretty much just overclock it to an extent so games get slightly better frame rate and things like that. I can actually see them putting in a whole new processor in this thing, but by putting a whole new processor and a whole new chipset into this thing would pretty much be a waste if a lot of games don't utilize it. And on top of that, they would really need to start making exclusives to this. I know a lot of people don't want to hear exclusives, and honestly, I'm in the camp where I think Nintendo's probably not going to even bother with giving out exclusive games. If you look at something like the PS4 Pro or the Xbox One, Microsoft and Sony realize they don't want to separate the fan base who already own the base models. They want to make sure every game's playable on every iteration of their hardware, and I think that's what Nintendo realizes. Sure, if you go back to something like the 3DS, the new 3DS has actually had a couple of different games. The two exclusives I remember on those platforms were Xenoblade, and I do remember Minecraft being exclusive as well, but besides that, there was nothing else that was exclusive. So it was kind of like, if you don't own the new 3DS models, it wasn't like you were missing out at all, because there was only like 2 or 3 games that were exclusive, so not that big a deal. Could Nintendo do something like that with the Switch Pro? Yes, Nintendo could definitely do something like that with a Switch Pro model. It could come out to the market and they could give it a couple exclusive games and then give up on that, but I highly doubt they're going to put too many exclusive games on there. And if they ever did, let's say did put exclusive games on a Switch Pro type model, I do think, for instance, Nintendo would only put like some weird, maybe not weird, but put third-party games on that. They would never make any first-party titles exclusives. It would just not make sense. Don't ever put exclusive first-party titles on another version of your existing console. That would not make sense. So it's going to be very interesting to see the Pro model more than the Mini model, because we kind of already know what to expect with the Mini model. It's just going to be a slimmed-down version of the Switch, probably undetachable Joy-Cons, probably no HD rumble. It could still be dockable. Some people are still up in the air about that, but I see it not being dockable, but who really knows if it's going to be dockable or not. But basically what I'm saying is that's kind of a question. That's not really mean something to get too excited for, because what I mean is we already know pretty much what to expect with that. The more interesting case is the Pro. What are they doing? Are they slight improvements, like I said, like an HD 1080p screen instead of 720p? Are we talking about a bigger battery, maybe a slightly bigger screen, better Joy-Cons, maybe more better comfortable fitting in your hands overall? Are we just talking about slight improvements? Are we talking about a whole new performance improvement to where games run better, they run smoother? Also, do we get a whole brand new chipset? What are we talking about when it comes to improvements? Actually, there is 2 games that are either on the Switch or upcoming on the Switch that actually have some kind of performance boosting modes where you can choose between, I think you can choose between performance or graphics. So if you want better frame rates, you can get that, but if you want better graphics, you can get that as well. Unravel 2 is one of them, and then the Darksiders remake that's on Switch also has that as well. So you can see that some developers are still letting you choose between that. Maybe if a new Switch Pro comes out, maybe that would be negated altogether, and maybe you would just flat out get good frame rate, and you would also get good graphics in the games, and you wouldn't have to choose and pick what type of games play different ways on the Switch, so that would be interesting as well. But let's talk about the Switch Pro. What are we talking about when we actually talk about the actual price of this system? Because that's interesting. Keep in mind, we already, of course, already have a current Switch. So what are they going to do with the current Switch that's already on the market? Are they going to totally discontinue that? Are they going to bump it down in price? Honestly, if you ask me, I can see that being like the middle ground, as weird as that sounds. I can see them having a Switch Mini, keep that at like $200, and then the current Switch is going to be kind of questionable at what type of price would they keep the current Switch at. Would it be $300 still? I can see them keeping it still at $300, and then when the Switch Pro comes out, it can be $400. But here's the thing. The Switch Pro is going to come out and it's not going to have any major improvements. Let's say like a slightly bigger screen, maybe 1080p HD quality bump, and maybe bigger screen, better Joy-Cons, better fitting, slight improvements. Maybe like, I forgot, Bluetooth could come to it as well. Talking about improvements, maybe if those are the type of improvements, maybe $400 is just way too much, because I don't know how many people would get excited for things like that. They're slight improvements, and a lot of the improvements I was talking about are just kind of seem like they're handheld only, with a better battery, a bigger screen, HD resolution. And if you don't play in handheld mode, that's kind of like a waste of $400 right there. Even if games play slightly better still, $400 seems like a whole lot of money to spend. So maybe if they did something like that, maybe they would want to bump it down to like $350 maybe. I could be wrong about that. That seems like, I don't know how much technology that would actually cost to put all those new improvements in, which are slight improvements. Maybe $350, and then maybe the current Switch right now, they bump down to maybe, let's say, $250. They can probably work out a deal where parts get cheaper and it becomes like $250. But if they put a new processor in it, and maybe they bump the GPU speeds up maybe of the current one, or whatever they're doing with all these improvements, maybe I can see them possibly still charging $400 for the upcoming Nintendo Switch Pro. So either way, it's very going to be a very good question. I want to see what Nintendo is actually going to charge for all these different SKUs. Like I said, the Switch Mini is probably a no-brainer. It's probably going to be around $200, $150. Just doesn't seem right. It seems a little bit too cheap. But ultimately, the question is, do I think Nintendo's bringing both of them out on the market, or one of them? Yes, I do think there is a good possibility that they are right, that they could be bringing two Switch models. I know a lot of people are still kind of saying, no, there's no Switch Pro. No way, no way, no way. But after this Wall Street Journal incident, it looks like there could be a possibility of a Switch Pro and a Switch Mini, or it could be one or another. It's very hard to tell what the future of the Nintendo Switch is going to be, but either way, we do know some type of revision to the Nintendo Switch hardware is coming in the near future. There's no way it's not. Anyway, guys, this is Wayne from My Tech News, signing out.